She showed up to a blind date, dressed like a beggar, but the CEO sitting across fell in love at first sight. The autumn air in New York bit gently at the skin, the kind of chill that made people pull their coats tighter as they hurried past glowing shop windows. On a quiet corner near Central Park, amber light spilled from the tall windows of La Belle Époque, one of the city's most elegant restaurants. Inside, glasses clinked softly, silverware danced on porcelain, and soft jazz played beneath murmurs of conversation. Everyone looked as if they had stepped out of a glossy magazine. Outside the glass door, Ilara stood still. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the handle. The reflection in the glass showed someone who didn't belong. Her faded olive-green coat was torn at one shoulder, her cuffs frayed. Her black leather shoes were cracked and pale from wear. Her long blonde hair, though tied back neatly, had lost its shine from too many nights without proper rest. Her cheeks were flushed, not with makeup, but with wind and nerves. Dust clung faintly to her jawline, and her blue eyes flickered between fear and hope. She had never entered a place like this, not in months, not since everything had fallen apart. But tonight was different. A miracle, maybe, or a terrible mistake. As she stepped inside, a wave of warmth and rich aroma, garlic, herbs, wine, rushed over her like something from another life. A young host approached, smiling politely, until his eyes dropped to her shoes. He hesitated, then recovered his composure. "Good evening, miss. Do you have a reservation?" Ilara blinked, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her coat pocket. It bore the name of the restaurant and a time. She handed it to him, saying nothing. The host's lips tightened slightly as he glanced at it. "This is a fine dining establishment," he said gently. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Already, the air behind him had shifted. Whispers curled like smoke from nearby tables. A woman in pearls clutched her purse closer. A man in a navy suit leaned toward his date, murmuring under his breath, "I'm sorry," Ilara whispered, her voice barely above silence. Her heart thudded in her ears as she turned to leave. Then, the scrape of a chair. The restaurant fell silent. A man stood up, tall, poised, wearing a tailored gray suit that matched the calm steel of his eyes. His hair was neatly styled, his movements quiet but confident. He walked directly toward her. "You're right on time," he said, voice warm and steady. Ilara looked up, startled. She had never seen him before. "I'm Stephen," he added, extending his hand. She stared. Her fingers, chapped and cold, didn't move, but Stephen didn't wait. With a sure but gentle touch, he took her hand in his and gave it a light squeeze. Then, without pause or explanation, he guided her, past every table, every stair, back to his seat. No one spoke, but their eyes followed. He pulled out a chair for her. "Please, sit." Ilara did, stiffly. Part of her still wanted to run, but another part, quiet and tired of running, stayed. She dropped her gaze, heart pounding. None of this made sense. Earlier that day, she had shared half her sandwich with a little boy curled up on a bench. His smile, bright, even through hunger, had left her thinking, if I ever get a chance to change my life, maybe this is it. Maybe just once, I should try. She had once studied to be a nurse. Her mother died young. Her father, swallowed by grief and alcohol, left when she was 16. Ilara worked nights, studied by day, still managed to care for others. Then a close friend fell gravely ill. Ilara sold everything to help, lost her job, lost her home, became invisible. For a year she had slept in shelters, but she never stopped being kind. An elderly nurse at the shelter had watched her for months, then one day whispered, "You have the heart of a healer. You deserve someone who sees that light." That same nurse, without telling her, had created a dating profile in Ilara's name. And now Stephen. Did he really see her? Or was this pity, wrapped in good manners? She glanced up. Stephen was not looking at the people whispering. He was looking only at her, not with pity, but with something else, something still and kind and grounding. Perhaps This was not a mistake. Perhaps this night had been waiting for her all along. Ilara kept her eyes on the neatly folded linen napkin in front of her, too self-conscious to look anywhere else. The soft clink of silverware and low hum of conversation around her made her feel more out of place than ever. She tucked her hands into her sleeves, trying to still their trembling. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I probably shouldn't have come." Stephen didn't flinch. "Why would you say that?" She offered a strained smile. "Look at me, and look at this place." Stephen leaned forward slightly, voice calm and steady. "You look more at home here than anyone else I've seen tonight." Ilara raised her eyebrows. "You don't have to be kind." "I'm not being kind," he replied. "I'm being honest." She gave a small laugh, unsure whether to feel moved or guarded. "I thought this might be a mistake, or some elaborate joke. You're not what I expected." "What were you expecting?" "Not someone who looks like they stepped out of a magazine," she muttered. Stephen chuckled and signaled the waiter. When the server came, he ordered 2 bowls of hot soup, fresh bread, and still water. No wine, no appetizers. Ilara blinked at the simplicity. "You didn't want the fancy stuff? Foie gras or whatever this place is known for? I've tried it. It's overrated. But soup on a cold night? That never goes out of style." She smiled, just a little. The tension in her shoulders eased. Trying to lighten the mood, Stephen shared a story about his first high society event. He had arrived straight from volunteering at a local nonprofit and wore a maintenance uniform. Everyone assumed he was staff. He ended up serving wine before someone realized he was actually a guest. Ilara laughed, really laughed. It surprised her. Stephen had a way of being fully present. There was no performance in his words, just steady warmth. "Have you always lived in New York?" he asked. "I moved here when I was 17. Stayed because I didn't have anywhere else to go." She hesitated. "I've been in and out of shelters. I used to visit one near 8th and the train station during winter." Stephen's eyes flickered with something unreadable. He didn't speak, but something had shifted in his gaze. Ilara continued, almost to herself. "Earlier today, I gave my last piece of bread to a little boy at a bus stop. He looked so cold, I couldn't walk past." Stephen nodded. "People who have the least often give the most." She blushed, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't even know what I'm doing here." He leaned in, gentler now. "Sometimes, someone like you shows up and changes someone else's entire world." Ilara looked at him, startled by the weight in his voice. Stephen's tone dropped lower. "Years ago, I was standing at a bus stop. It was pouring, and I was soaked, freezing. I didn't have a coat. Then a girl walked by. She had blonde hair tied back, eyes that looked like they hadn't rested in a long time. She took off her coat, wrapped it around me, and kept walking." Ilara stared at him. "She didn't say a word," Stephen went on. "She didn't wait for thanks. She just vanished. I never forgot her." Ilara didn't know what to say. Her memory held countless such moments. She had given her coat more than once. "I wonder," Stephen said, "if that girl was you." Her chest tightened. She offered only a small shrug, unsure how to respond. Stephen didn't push. He smiled, softer this time. When the meal was over, he glanced at his watch. "May I walk you home?" Ilara shook her head gently. "Thank you, but I need to get back before the shelter closes." Stephen nodded like he had expected that. As he reached for his coat, he paused and pulled something from the inside pocket, a white handkerchief, neatly folded, with subtle embroidery on one corner, S.M. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. "It'll be colder tonight. Keep this, just in case." Ilara hesitated. "I'll give it back," she said softly. "No rush," Stephen replied, "but if you ever feel like returning it, I'll be easy to find." She picked it up, cradling it in her hands like something fragile, and for the first time that night, she felt something shift. It wasn't pity in his eyes, it was something else entirely. She felt seen, really seen. The soft hum of the restaurant had returned. But for Stephen, time felt suspended. He sat still, his eyes fixed on the glass door that had just closed behind Ilara. Her presence lingered in his mind, frail, uncertain, yet filled with quiet strength. He exhaled slowly, tracing the rim of his untouched wineglass. "She's gone, sir," the waiter said politely, placing the bill beside him. Then, after a moment's pause, curiosity crept into his tone. "If you don't mind me asking, who was she?" Stephen didn't look at him. His voice came softly. "She once saved me, though she doesn't know it." The waiter said nothing more, and Stephen turned inward, sinking into a memory that had never really left him. 10 years ago, it had been pouring that night. One of those relentless New York storms that seemed to wash everything away but the noise. Stephen, then 24, huddled under the narrow awning of a closed bookstore. Jobless, exhausted, and living out of a leaky van, he had spent the day hungry and soaked to the bone. He had never felt smaller, more forgotten. Then, out of the blur of rain, a figure approached. A young woman in a worn yellow raincoat, hood pulled low. She slowed when she saw him, her lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. Before he could speak, she stepped forward and placed the coat around his shoulders. Its warmth stunned him. "You'll get wet," he stammered. "You need it more," she said gently. Her voice was soft, musical. Under the streetlight, he caught a glimpse of her eyes, blue, tired, kind. He tried to thank her, but she was already turning away, rain falling over her like a veil. She glanced back once, offered a faint smile, and vanished into the storm. That small act stayed with him, etched deeper than any grand gesture ever could. It reminded him that compassion didn't always come with reasons or rewards. Back in the present, Stephen leaned back in his chair. Raindrops had started tapping against the window, as if the night wanted to echo the past. He still had that raincoat. He'd patched it up and kept it carefully folded in a cedar box. It wasn't just fabric. It was proof that kindness existed, that it could change a life. He had often thought of her over the years, the anonymous girl with golden hair who gave without expecting anything back. She had never known the difference she made. That single night in the rain had shifted something inside him, pushing him to build a life rooted in purpose. And just last week, life had circled back. He was in the back of his car on Fifth Avenue, reviewing paperwork, when he noticed a small commotion outside. An elderly woman had fallen in the street, groceries scattered. People stared but didn't move. Then, someone rushed in. A young woman, coat too thin for the weather, knelt beside the woman and used her own body to shield her from the light rain. She spoke softly, reassuring the older woman, staying with her until the ambulance arrived. And when help came, she simply faded into the crowd. Stephen watched through the car window, heart pounding. The hair, the posture, that same quiet grace. He couldn't shake the feeling. He asked his assistant to look into it discreetly. Just a name, just to know. Her name was Ilara Quinn, former nursing student, no family nearby, homeless, volunteered when she could. The name meant nothing, but the truth hit like a wave. He didn't want to overwhelm her with money or stories. He didn't want her to feel indebted, but he had to see her again. So he did the only thing he could. He asked someone to create an anonymous dating profile. Just a message, a time, a place. He wasn't sure she'd come, but she had. Nervous, hesitant, dressed in that old green coat, but still carrying that same quiet light she had years ago. Stephen now sat in silence, watching his own reflection in the glass. Older, steadier, but no less moved. He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "I don't know if she remembers me, but I remember her. I always will. And if fate gives me another chance, I won't let her slip away again." Outside, the rain continued falling, soft, quiet, and full of promise. Morning light spilled through the shelter's narrow windows, casting soft gold across the worn linoleum floor. Ilara sat quietly on her cot, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, Her fingers curled around the white handkerchief Stephen had given her. She had slept with it under her pillow. Now and then, she pressed it to her cheek, not for the cloth, but for what it meant. Someone had offered her something without judgment, without pity. A voice broke the silence. "So," the old nurse across the room said, stirring coffee in a cracked mug. "You've been smiling in your sleep." Elara looked up, startled. The woman raised a knowing brow. "You thought I wouldn't notice? That little grin gave you away." Elara flushed, then smiled. "It was a strange night. Strange good or strange bad?" "Strange good," Elara murmured, glancing at the handkerchief. The nurse sipped her coffee. "Sometimes, good starts strange. Let it." That afternoon, Elara walked the familiar stretch from the shelter to the corner bakery, passing buildings that once felt cold and indifferent. Today, they seemed softer, the breeze gentler. For the first time in forever, she noticed small things: the rustle of leaves, the scent of bread, the giggle of a child chasing pigeons. She felt lighter. Days passed, and Stephen did not call, but she kept thinking of him, the way he listened, the way he saw her, not as someone broken, but whole. Still, she warned herself not to dream. Men like Stephen did not belong in her world. Then one late afternoon, as she wandered through the city, Elara turned a corner and stopped. At the edge of Brookside Park, a silver van stood beneath tall trees. A line had formed. People with grocery bags, small children, tired eyes. Volunteers handed out sandwiches and bottles of water. Elara's eyes caught the logo printed on the side of the van. Her breath hitched. It was his company's name. She stepped closer, slowly, unsure if she was hoping or fearing what she might see. And then she saw him. Stephen. Wearing a navy jacket and rolled-up sleeves, he moved with quiet focus, handing out food with the same calm grace he'd shown in the restaurant. No cameras, no staff, just him. Elara didn't approach. She stayed behind a bench, half hidden, watching. She wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. Then it happened. Stephen turned, holding what seemed to be the last sandwich. His gaze drifted across the edge of the park and paused, not directly on her, but close. She froze. He walked to the nearest table, placed the sandwich down gently. Beside it, he set a small bundle wrapped in brown paper and twine. Lavender. Her breath caught again. Without a word, Stephen stepped back, nodded to a fellow volunteer, and quietly walked away. He did not look back. Elara stood there, unmoving, long after he was gone. Eventually, she crossed the grass, her hands trembling. The sandwich was simple, cheese and tomato on whole wheat, but it wasn't the food that stopped her. It was the lavender. Fresh. Her favorite. He remembered. She pressed the flowers to her chest and closed her eyes. No words had been exchanged. But somehow, everything had been said. Back at the shelter, Elara placed the sandwich and the lavender bouquet on the nightstand beside her cot. She didn't eat. She didn't find a jar. She just sat and stared, the handkerchief Stephen had given her still tucked in her coat pocket. She reached for it, pressing it to her chest. Her fingers curled around the fabric, eyes stinging, but no tears came. She felt caught between gratitude and fear, between hope and the instinct to guard herself. Later that night, under the hallway's dim light, she found a pen and a sheet of plain paper. No phone, no email. She didn't know if Stephen expected to hear from her, but she needed to say something. Her handwriting was shaky as she wrote, "You are kind, too kind, but I cannot be the person you think I am. I'm not the one you need. I am not worthy of being chosen." She folded the note, sealed it in a plain envelope, and gave it to the old nurse with instructions to mail it to the company name printed on the van. No name, no return address, just the words. The next day, Stephen sat in his office, staring out at the skyline. The envelope lay on his desk unopened. When he finally read it, he stayed silent. His assistant, sensing the shift in his posture, asked, "Should we reach out again?" Stephen shook his head. She didn't say no because she hates me. She said no because she hasn't learned how to value herself yet. He placed the letter in the top drawer, like something fragile. Time passed. Ilara returned to her quiet routine. She spent more hours volunteering at the nearby nursing home, bathing patients, reading stories, learning how to listen to the spaces between words. Slowly, the residents warmed to her. One elderly man, often lost in his own mind, began calling her something no one else did. "Hope," he'd say, gently squeezing her hand. "You look like Hope." At first, she corrected him. Then, she didn't. Somehow, the name fit. One rainy afternoon, while washing dishes, Ilara slipped on the wet floor. A sharp crack rang out as she hit the ground, followed by the clatter of broken ceramic. Pain shot through her wrist. Then darkness. She woke in the hospital, dazed. Her arm was in a cast. The room hummed with fluorescent quiet, and Stephen was there. Sitting beside her, coat over the chair, sleeves rolled. No bouquet, no questions, just him, holding her hand. Her throat tightened. She didn't ask how he knew or why he came. She didn't need to, and he didn't speak either. They just sat, breathing in rhythm. Eventually, she dozed off again. When she woke, he was gone. But on the bedside table sat a new bundle of lavender, fuller than the last. Next to it, a folded note in firm handwriting. "You don't have to choose me, but please, don't keep choosing against yourself." She held the note against her chest. For the first time in years, something inside her softened. Not healed, but beginning. The first morning back at the shelter after her hospital stay felt different. The pain in her wrist still throbbed, but it was bearable. What surprised Ilara more was the unfamiliar lightness in her chest, like a weight had shifted, just slightly. Days passed slowly, but they carried something new. A week after she was discharged, Ilara received a letter in the mail. It was hand-delivered by the old nurse, who held it like it contained something delicate. "It's official," the woman said, barely hiding her grin. "You've been accepted into the City Medical Institute's re-entry nursing program, fully funded." Ilara stared at the page, heart pounding. A scholarship, a second chance. Her first thought was Stephen. She carried the letter around with her for a full day before finally asking the nurse if there was a way to contact him. She felt silly, but also strangely certain. When they met outside the shelter 2 days later, Stephen was already waiting, leaning against a park bench with his hands tucked in his coat pockets. Ilara approached with cautious steps, the letter folded neatly in her jacket. "Was this you?" she asked softly, holding up the envelope. Stephen smiled, but shook his head. "No, it was your record, your references, your past work. I just made a phone call. Suggested they take a closer look." Her shoulders loosened a little. "So it wasn't pity. It was recognition," he said gently. "You were already qualified. They just didn't know where to look." That evening, Ilara walked home with her hands deep in her pockets, the wind tugging gently at her hair. The weight in her chest felt lighter. She began attending classes a week later. The books, the lectures, the long hours of lab training, it all came rushing back like muscle memory. But this time, she approached it with something she had never truly had before, a sense that maybe she was allowed to want more. Stephen did not hover. He would check in sometimes. A short message dropped off at the shelter, a coffee waiting outside the campus gates, always subtle, never demanding. He let her move at her own pace. At first, Ilara still kept her guard up. She would thank him politely, retreat behind smiles that only lasted a second too long. But she no longer turned away. Trust, she realized, was not an instant decision. It was built brick by brick, slow, fragile, but steady. One chilly afternoon, after class, Ilara stopped by the nursing home to visit the residents she had come to care for deeply. One of them, a retired beekeeper with shaky hands and a warm heart, offered her a small jar of honey he had collected that morning. She accepted it, then hesitated. That evening, she walked over to Stephen's office. She waited outside until he emerged, coat in hand, surprised but smiling when he saw her. Without a word, she handed him the jar. "It's not much," she said, "but I thought of you." Stephen turned the jar slowly in his hands, reading the label scrawled in uneven handwriting, "Pure patience." She added, almost playfully, "The man who gave it to me said there's nothing sweeter than patience." He looked at her for a long moment before responding. "You know," he said quietly, "you're at your most beautiful when you say something kind." Elara blinked, caught off guard, but then, for the first time in front of him, she laughed. Not nervously, not politely, just freely. It echoed gently between them like the start of a new language. Stephen didn't say anything more. He simply smiled, tucked the honey jar into his pocket, and offered to walk her home. She said yes, not because she needed help, but because, for once, she wanted to share the road. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of day where the wind moved gently through the trees and time seemed to slow down just enough to notice things. Elara and Stephen sat on a weathered park bench beside a small waffle cart, the air filled with the scent of cinnamon and warm batter. They had barely spoken for the past half hour, each holding a paper plate with half-eaten waffles, steam still rising. It was not silence of awkwardness, but of safety. Elara stared down at her plate, then glanced sideways. "Do you ever wonder why it's easier to care for strangers than to let someone care for you?" Stephen nodded slowly, setting his fork aside. "All the time." She looked away for a moment. Then her voice softened. "My father, he used to hit me. Not always, but often enough that I stopped expecting love to feel safe. When my mom died, he left me. Just like that. No note, no goodbye." Stephen's jaw tensed, but he said nothing. "I think that's why I ran," Elara continued. "From everything good, even you. Because something in me believed I didn't deserve kindness if it came without a price." Her fingers trembled slightly as she set her plate on the bench. "It's not easy to unlearn that." Stephen inhaled slowly. "I lived in a van once. For almost 2 years. I ate out of dumpsters, slept in laundromats. I used to stand on street corners and ask people for change, and most wouldn't even look me in the eye." Elara turned to face him, surprised. "I know what it feels like to be invisible," he said. "To think that no one will ever see you for anything more than your lowest moment." She blinked rapidly, but the tears still came. Stephen gently reached for her hand, but didn't pull. Just waited. She let him take it. "I'm not here to rescue you, Elara," he said quietly. "You already did that for me. Years ago. One moment, one gesture, you gave me your coat and didn't ask for anything. I never forgot that." She looked up, eyes searching his. "I'm here," he continued, "not because you need saving, but because you're worth choosing. And if I can be the one who reminds you of that, every day, I will." Elara pressed her lips together, trying to steady the weight in her chest. "Maybe," she whispered. "That's what I've always needed. Not someone to fix me, just someone who won't run when I'm broken." Stephen's voice was steady. "Then I'll stay. Not to fix, not to fill, just to walk beside you, wherever you are." They sat there for a long time, hands intertwined, the waffle cart packing up behind them, the city quieting around them. For the first time, it didn't feel like running or reaching. It just felt right. The morning sun filtered through the wide windows of the nursing home's main hall, casting soft light over rows of chairs and flower arrangements. Balloons in pastel colors danced lightly with the breeze from the open doors, and gentle music played somewhere in the background. Today was the annual Staff Appreciation Ceremony, a tradition meant to honor those who had dedicated their time and heart to caring for the residents. Elara stood near the back, wearing her white nurse uniform. Her long golden hair was pulled neatly into a braid that draped over one shoulder. A name badge pinned to her chest read simply, "Elara, RN." It had taken her a year of rebuilding, of studying late into the night, of caring, learning, listening, of healing. When her name was called, A ripple of applause moved through the room. She walked slowly toward the stage, accepting a small certificate and a single white rose from the director. But just as she turned to step down, something stopped her. At the entrance of the hall, a man in a navy suit stepped into view, carrying a massive bouquet of lavender wrapped in soft white paper. His presence filled the room quietly but unmistakably. "Stephen." Whispers moved through the crowd. He walked calmly through the aisle, stopping in front of the stage where Alara stood, frozen in surprise. He smiled up at her and offered the lavender. She took it, eyes already glassy with emotion. Then, without a word, Stephen knelt down on one knee. A soft gasp moved through the room. Nurses paused mid-step. A resident in the front row clapped once and then covered her mouth. Stephen reached into his coat pocket and brought out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. But his eyes never left Alara's. His voice was steady, but full of emotion. "You're not invisible anymore," he said. "You never were. You were just waiting for someone to look closely enough." Alara's breath caught. "You were the first person who saw me," Stephen continued, "when the world turned away, and you gave me something no one else did, hope. Now I want to be that for you." He paused. "Let me be the place you rest when the world gets too heavy. Let me walk with you. First steps, hard steps, all of it, for the first time and forever." Silence fell. Then Alara took one slow step forward. She set the lavender bouquet down gently on the edge of the stage and lowered herself until she was kneeling too, at his level. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but her smile was radiant. "You were never saving me," she whispered. "You were reminding me I was worth loving." Stephen slipped the ring onto her finger. And in that moment, as applause rose around them, Alara cried, not out of sorrow, but with the kind of tears that only come when a heart finally feels seen, finally feels home. People clapped. A few cried. But mostly, they just smiled, because something about this felt right. Real. Two people who had been broken in different ways, choosing to believe in each other. Choosing love, not as rescue, but as recognition. You do not need to be born in the light to shine. Sometimes a hand reaching out at the right moment can be the miracle you never dared to dream of. Thank you for watching this story of hope, healing, and unexpected love. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and hit the hype button to support our channel. Every like, share, and comment helps us bring more true, soul-healing stories to life. Remember, one small act of kindness can change a life. Until next time, stay kind, stay open. Soul-Stirring Stories, where every story touches a soul.